Hi there VC, it's Steve Whitty here. It's time for a video, I feel. Hope everything's good with you. I'm okay. Just got over a bit of COVID, but everything's good apart from that. The reason for the video is I recently saw a thread floating around for the top 20 British bands. Now this is something I think Mazzy had put up on the back of, I think, the elections, where I think he don't know whether he's feeling he wanted to move over to the UK, but and I've noticed that a few other people have picked up on it. I know James Griffiths and John Bellamy have done their video. I haven't seen them yet because I thought this would be a good idea to do a video on, and it sort of harks back. I think a few years ago I did a top 10 British bands video. It's that long ago, so it's a good chance to sort of reassess the British bands. And how I've done it is, it's very easy to say these are the best British bands, these are my favourite British bands, or these are the inspirational British bands. I've combined the three. A lot of it's my favourites. First few who I consider to have a big influence on British music or genres in particular, and then the last couple will be my absolute favourites. So let's start. I started off with probably one of the most influential bands in the UK, Shadows. Pre-Beatles, they had their main success, instrumental band. Were backing band to Cliff Richard, and known as the Drifters. And yeah, they were very influential. They had a lot of top 10 singles. Brought the owners of the first Stratocasters to come into the UK. Need I say any more? Often overlooked, in my opinion. I've got obviously a couple of bands that made genre-defining albums, and I'm lucky to have those in my collection. So on the metal side, you got Black Sabbath, the debut album. That totally defines what heavy metal's about. And then on the prog side, King Crimson, in the Court of the Crimson King. You could argue that Sgt. Pepper could be classed as that as well. And that, you know, that could be a good argument. But I feel prog's properly started here. So the next lot of bands I'm going to show you are particular favourites of mine. Whether they're the best, whether they're influential, that is up to you to decide. I've always had a soft spot for this band, Free. Very simple sounding band. And that's not to deride it, because from that sort of simple lineup, there's some great albums, and obviously this is the big album that's got All Right Now on it. Queen, I couldn't do a list without mentioning Queen. It's one of the groups that sort of unites my family. My musical taste are a bit left field to what my family do. They do like what's on the radio and whatever. But yeah, Queen is one of those bands that sort of unites everyone. A band that I got introduced to when I was a teenager, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I took to them. This is about 83. It was punk new wave, so anything prog was sort of old hat. But I worked with a guy that played keyboards, and Keith Emerson was a big hero of his, and he kindly did all the albums on tape for me. Never often looked at a band, NCC. Great albums. The first 4 albums are really great, really good. Studio craftsmanship. Yeah, you know, obviously the best known songs. Sheet Music Here was the second album. On the punk side, The Clash. And I think the reason I like The Clash, I think because they actually were smart enough to move away from the punk, and it took in all their influences, reggae, early rock and roll. They weren't, you know, they had the punk ideals, but musically they sort of moved it on, particularly with the London Calling album. Now, one of the joys of buying new getting back to buying vinyl and establishing relationships, especially with Pete at the shop, Psychotron Records. There's a lot of bands that I missed, sort of missed out, passed me by. Maybe they were around too early before I started buying music. And one of these such bands he introduced me to, Groundhogs. This is Blues Obituary, I think their second album. Absolutely love this band. I know Captain Sensible from The Damned thinks that T.S. McPhee, one of the great guitarists, and I do get it. I think it's there's more to it. There's more to it than just blues. I've got a book over there I've got to finish reading on the Groundhogs. So going back to punk, Sex Pistols. 12 years old when these came around. A band that was swearing on the telly and making records that were banned, and what could not a 12, 13-year-old not like about this band at the time. I've also got a soft spot for this band, Ultravox, particularly the early stuff, which I've discovered over the last 5 years. But very new wave-ish, with the 3 albums made with John Fox, sort of got more experimental as they went along. I mean, influenced by krautrock, the exclamation mark, which was originally on the end of the name, was a nod to Neu! Another band from my teenage years, I loved Skids. I brought all their singles when they came out, we got in the charts, and then got round to getting the albums. Not got round to seeing them again, and I know I've been round. This is The Absolute Game from 1980. Yeah, really good, really good. Now, big thing, Bill Nelson. Susie and the Banshees. Again, another band that took a move away from punk into the goth and created the style of their own. I absolutely loved, particularly the early stuff. I love. But yeah, great band. Again, off that ilk, XTC. I know there's a lot of love, particularly in the States, for them. 79. This is a reissue of Drums and Wires. Yeah, they were good pop sensibilities out of the new wave. It's an excellent band. And then Roxy Music. Very, I did my Roxy Music album ranking years ago. I sort of hinted that the reason what Roxy Music, I think, hit rich scene was they tried to look futuristic with the glam look, particularly the early albums, but the music sort of harked back to an earlier time, to rock and roll. So then you got Eno's experimentations on these first 2 albums. It's just absolutely wonderful. They're a wonderful band. In fact, all their albums are wonderful. Even Avalon, it took me a while to get into that, but yeah, great. Probably my favourite band to come out of Birmingham, The Move. I think some of you might have seen a video I did with James Griffiths about this a few years ago. I think Roy Wood's one of the untapped geniuses we have in the music. He's sort of like production-wise, musicality, just great band. And obviously, we all know they morphed into Electric Light Orchestra, and then Roy Wood went on to Wizzard. Great band, but I don't think they was ever as good. Roy was ever as good as he was in The Move. Great singles as well. Now I move to what last 4 bands going to show, sort of define what a group should be about. It should be a gang. Whether they get on or not is another thing, and I think this is a good example. The Who. This is a twofer I've got. It's fair to say that I don't think they 4 of them got on, but well outside the band. But when they got on stage, they really just hit it. I mean, obviously Pete Townsend, you got the sort of visionary songwriter as well, with Tommy and Quadrophenia, all that sort of stuff. But just amazing. And if you look at the live albums, obviously, you know, Live at Leeds is just great. And he's got the band really, when they come together, it just clicks. It's just right. Live at the Isle of Wight Festival, I think 1970, is probably one of the best live recordings I've ever heard. I can't do a top 20 British band without mentioning this lot. And again, the Beatles define what I think a group is. A gang. They've done, you know, obviously Lennon, McCartney and Harrison did this stint in Hamburg, which bonded them a bit. And then they knew about Ringo, and Ringo was a seamless fit when he was brought into the band. It just added some extra, and yeah, it's they were all together. You know, it was this big ride they were on, particularly from '63 to '66. They stuck together. I think once they stopped touring, they did discover their own time. They got their own lives to lead, and that's when it started to sort of break apart a bit. But I think they define a group to me. When it comes to my favourite bands, I have to be honest with you. It's a toss-up which is the top one from two bands. And I had to refer back to that old video. And I'm going to stick to my number 2. Slade. Just epitome of a gang. Now again, they weren't a band that sort of hung around together out of the band situation. They were all 4 quite different people, but again, to put them all 4 together, they were just tremendous. They rocked, went through good times, had hard times, got back together, and then made it back up. The shame that I think relationships now between them aren't great. But Slade, they were a band for the lads, dare I say it, and has my number 1 band, who I think is the best British band ever come out, best British band ever, Mott the Hoople. Yeah, I just again define what a band is. It's loud, raucous. I listened to Mott the Hoople, the live reunion 2013, not so long back, and absolutely just blew me away. You know, the fact Ian Hunter's born the same year as my dad. You know, he's still making music, still making great music. But define what a band is about. They've had the knocks. The first 4 albums didn't do well. They were about to split up. They had the bit of luck that Bowie heard about it and said, no, here's a song. There's a couple of songs, pick one. And the rest is history. And in Saturday gigs, they write the ultimate goodbye song. And that's why I think Mott the Hoople are my favourite British band. So there you go. Now, having recorded this, I'm free to watch all the other videos now. I didn't want to be influenced. So there. If you like what you see, click thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, then by all means do. I'm not obsessed with numbers as I think some people are, but there you go. Right, take care of yourselves. Enjoy your Sunday. As I'm recording this, the sun is shining at the moment. I've got a busy day ahead, but great. Take care of yourselves. Keep spinning. More importantly, keep on smiling.